Most of us believe we use media. We choose what to watch. We decide what to read. We scroll, click, listen, skip. It feels active, intentional, controlled. But Marshall McLuhan would say this is the first illusion. Because the most powerful influence of media does not come from the content you consume. It comes from the environment media creates around your mind. And environments are not neutral. You don't notice them precisely because you live inside them. McLuhan's most famous statement, "The medium is the message," was never meant to sound clever. It was a warning, a quiet one, and like most quiet warnings, it was largely ignored. He was pointing to something deeply unsettling. That media does not simply deliver information. It reshapes perception. It reorganizes attention. It changes how thought itself moves. And it does so long before you have a chance to agree or disagree. Marshall McLuhan was born in 1911, long before smartphones, social media, or the internet. But that's exactly why his work matters now. He studied how printing presses, radio, television, and advertising altered human consciousness. Not opinions, consciousness. He noticed that every major communication technology subtly rewires how people experience time, space, and relationship. Print culture trained the mind to think linearly. Radio created collective emotional resonance. Television shifted attention from logic to image. And digital media, it does something far more intimate. It colonizes attention itself. Most people think media influences what they think. McLuhan said that's the least interesting part. What matters is how media changes how you think. Shortens patience. Fragments focus. Accelerates reaction. Collapses context. And once those changes happen, content becomes secondary. This is why two people can consume completely different content on the same platform, yet end up with the same anxiety, the same restlessness, the same sense of being overwhelmed. The platform is the message. In modern life, media no longer arrives at scheduled times. It surrounds us. It waits in our pockets. It fills silence instantly. It removes the natural pauses where reflection once lived. And here is McLuhan's key insight. We mistake convenience for control. You feel free because you can choose what to consume. But the structure of consumption was never chosen by you. You did not design the infinite scroll. You did not choose notifications as the rhythm of your day. You did not decide that boredom should be eliminated at all costs. Those decisions were made for you. Quietly, elegantly, profitably. And once the environment is set, behavior follows. McLuhan often said that the effects of media are not dramatic. They are gradual, like climate, not weather. You don't notice them moment to moment. You notice them when something feels wrong but you can't quite name it. Difficulty concentrating. Constant low-level anxiety. A sense of urgency without purpose. The feeling of being informed but not wise. Connected but not close. These are not personal failures. They are environmental symptoms. But modern culture teaches us to internalize them as individual problems. You think you need better discipline, better habits, better productivity systems. McLuhan would say you are trying to fix a structural problem with personal effort. and effort cannot outwork an environment. One of McLuhan's most unsettling observations was that humans tend to become servants of their own technologies. Not because technology is evil, but because it extends us. The wheel extends the foot. The book extends the eye. The smartphone extends the nervous system. But every extension also comes with amputation. When memory is outsourced, recall weakens. When navigation is automated, spatial awareness fades. When attention is constantly stimulated, silence becomes uncomfortable. The problem is not that we use tools. The problem is that we forget they are tools. At some point, the extension becomes the environment, and the environment becomes invisible. This is where McLuhan's work intersects deeply with psychology. Because attention is not just a mental skill, it is the foundation of experience. What you attend to shapes what you perceive. What you perceive shapes what you value. What you value shapes how you live. Media intervenes at the very first step. It doesn't tell you what to think. It tells you what to notice. And what you don't notice quietly disappears. Think about how often you reach for your phone without intention. Not to check something specific, but to check anything. That movement happens before thought, before choice, before decision. McLuhan would say, that is not usage. That is conditioning. The medium has trained your nervous system. This becomes especially clear when you try to stop. The discomfort that arises when the phone is not there. The urge to fill silence. The restlessness in moments of waiting. These are not addictions in the dramatic sense. They are adaptations. Your nervous system has adapted to constant input. And when input disappears, it feels like something is wrong. But nothing is wrong. You are just noticing the environment's influence for the first time. McLuhan warned that the more immersive a medium becomes, the harder it is to perceive its effects. Print was obvious. Television was seductive. Digital media is intimate. It lives where thought lives. This is why debates about good content versus bad content miss the point entirely. You can follow educational accounts, read intelligent articles, listen to thoughtful podcasts, and still feel fragmented. Because fragmentation is structural. The medium fragments experience into notifications, clips, headlines, updates. And the mind adapts by thinking in fragments. This affects relationships too. Conversations become shorter. Listening becomes partial. Presence competes with potential interruption. You may be physically with someone while psychologically elsewhere. McLuhan would say this is not rudeness. It is environmental conditioning. And here is the most uncomfortable part. We defend the very systems that shape us. Because media doesn't feel imposed. It feels chosen. You like what you see. It reflects your interests. It feels personal. But personalization is not freedom. It is refinement of influence. The more a system knows your preferences, the more precisely it can hold your attention. And attention is the real currency. McLuhan predicted this long before algorithms existed. He said that media would move from informing to programming. Not in the sense of propaganda, but in shaping patterns of response. React faster. Scroll longer. Pause less. And the faster thought moves, the less space there is for perception. This is where his work becomes deeply practical. Because the question is not whether to use media or not. Withdrawal is not the answer. McLuhan never suggested going backward. The real question is, can you perceive the medium while inside it? Can you notice how it changes your body, your breathing, your patience, your sense of time? This kind of awareness is rare because it requires slowing down inside a fast environment. Try this simple experiment. Notice how your mind feels after 20 minutes of scrolling versus 20 minutes of walking without audio. Not what you learned, not what you saw, but how your nervous system feels. Is it open or contracted? Quiet or agitated? Grounded or restless? That contrast is the message. Media does not announce its effects. It whispers them into habit. And habit becomes identity. I'm just someone who likes to stay informed. I work better with stimulation. I relax by scrolling. McLuhan would ask, are these preferences or adaptations? When a medium dominates an environment, resisting it feels unnatural, even antisocial. You feel out of sync. This is why silence now feels awkward. Why waiting feels intolerable. Why boredom feels like a problem. But boredom was once a gateway. It allowed attention to settle, imagination to wander, insight to emerge. McLuhan did not romanticize the past. He simply noticed what was being traded. Speed for depth, quantity for coherence, connection for presence. And these trades happen without negotiation. This is why the idea of using media responsibly often fails. Responsibility implies conscious choice. But most media influence operates below conscious choice. The environment acts first. Awareness comes later, if at all. So what does freedom look like in this context? Not control. Not abstinence. Not moral judgment. Freedom begins with perception. Seeing when your attention is being pulled rather than placed. Noticing when urgency appears without necessity. Recognizing when stimulation replaces curiosity. McLuhan believed that once a medium is perceived, its power weakens. Not because it disappears, but because it becomes visible. You can only navigate what you can see. This is why he emphasized understanding media, not fighting it. Understanding how it shapes rhythm. How it alters scale. How it restructures social space. For example, social media collapses distance. You are psychologically close to events far away. Crises arrive alongside memes. Tragedy sits next to entertainment. The nervous system was not designed for this compression. So numbness is not apathy. It is overload. McLuhan would say, the problem is not that you don't care. It's that you are exposed beyond capacity. And when exposure exceeds capacity, detachment follows. Again, not a moral failure, an environmental effect. Once you see this, self-blame softens. And something more intelligent becomes possible. You may choose to structure your day differently. Create intentional boundaries. Protect certain spaces from constant input. Not as rules, as recognition. Recognition that attention is finite. Recognition that silence is not empty. Recognition that depth requires slowness. McLuhan once said that artists are the first to sense changes in perception because they feel shifts before they are named. Today, many people feel something is off, but don't know why. They blame motivation. They blame focus. They blame themselves. McLuhan would say, "Look outward before looking inward." What environment are you living in? What rhythms shape your days? What technologies mediate your relationships? This is not about rejecting media. It is about reclaiming awareness. You don't need to escape the medium. You need to see it. And when you do, a subtle freedom appears. Not freedom from media. Freedom within media. The freedom to pause. To choose silence occasionally. To let attention rest instead of react. That freedom is fragile. And it requires continual noticing. Because the medium never stops shaping. But neither does perception. So the next time you reach for your phone without knowing why, don't judge it. Observe it. Notice the impulse. Notice the body. Notice the speed. That moment of noticing is already a shift. Marshall McLuhan did not offer solutions. He offered vision. The ability to see the water we swim in. And perhaps that is the most radical gift in an age drowning in information. You don't use media. Media uses you. Until you see it. This has been what we are, where understanding the world begins with understanding the environments that shape us. Thank you for listening.